Captain Kim Soo-jin floated in the observation deck of her ship, watching distant stars through the massive viewport. The year 2157 felt peaceful in a way her great-grandfather could never have imagined. 30 years had passed since the last human war ended, and Earth had become something entirely different. Soo-jin remembered visiting the old military museum as a child. Glass cases displayed rusty rifles and faded uniforms, like ancient artifacts. Her teacher had explained how humans once fought each other with these weapons, but it seemed like stories from another world. The guide pointed to tanks and fighter jets, calling them instruments of humanity's dark age. Children giggled at the silly idea that people once hurt each other on purpose. Now Soo-jin spent her days doing what humans did best in this new era: exploring and learning. Her archaeological vessel Deep Wisdom traveled between dead solar systems, cataloging civilizations that had vanished millions of years ago. Her crew of 22 scientists treated each discovery like treasure hunters finding gold. Every morning brought new wonders: ancient cities on airless moons, crystalline structures that sang in the solar wind, art galleries carved into asteroids by beings whose names were lost to time. Soo-jin's job felt more like being a cosmic librarian than a ship captain. Earth itself had transformed beyond recognition. Former military bases grew gardens and research centers. The old Pentagon served as a children's education center, where kids learned about extinct alien languages. Fighter pilot academies became art schools. Nobody even remembered what the rank of general meant anymore. Soo-jin's crew reflected this peaceful age perfectly. Her engineer Park Min-ho wrote poetry about nebulas in his spare time. Navigation officer Lee Hae-jin composed music inspired by pulsar rhythms. Weapons officer, well, they didn't have weapons officers anymore. Instead, they had cultural analysis specialists. The ship's computer announced another routine day of scanning dead worlds in the outer rim territories. Sector 7 Alpha contained 3 planets that once supported life. Standard procedure meant cataloging ruins, taking samples, and moving to the next system. Nothing exciting ever happened out here. Communications officer Choi Woo-jin sat at his station, monitoring the usual background noise of space. Radio waves from distant civilizations, electromagnetic storms, the gentle hum of cosmic radiation. He had trained to recognize artificial signals from natural ones, though in 5 years of deep space work, he had never found anything interesting. Then something changed. A pattern in the static caught his attention. His instruments detected organized pulses cutting through the void, definitely artificial, definitely alien, and definitely desperate. The signal repeated every few minutes, with increasing urgency. Woo-jin called Captain Soo-jin to his station with trembling hands. Neither of them had ever encountered a live alien transmission. Their peaceful civilization was about to receive its first message from beings fighting for their very survival. Communications officer Choi Woo-jin worked frantically at his console, trying to clean up the alien signal. Captain Kim Soo-jin stood behind him, her heart racing as strange sounds filled the bridge. The universal translator, a device that had only been tested on ancient recordings, struggled to process the incoming message. The signal came from Kepler 442, a star system over 200 light-years away. As the translator worked, individual words began forming in Korean on Woo-jin's screen. The crew gathered around, watching humanity's first real-time conversation with alien life unfold before their eyes. The beings called themselves Z from the translation patterns. They seemed to be aquatic creatures who communicated through sound waves traveling through water. Their language had musical qualities, like whales singing across Earth's oceans. But underneath the beauty lay pure terror. The message painted a horrifying picture. An empire, calling itself the Devourers, had arrived at the Zephyrian homeworld without warning. These weren't explorers or traders seeking peaceful contact. They were conquerors who consumed everything in their path. The Zephyrians described massive ships that stripped entire continents bare, harvesting resources and capturing survivors for unknown purposes. Elder Quarrel spoke for her dying people. The translator conveyed not just her words, but the weakness in her voice, the struggle of someone speaking through injuries that would soon claim her life. Sujin found herself crying as she listened to this alien grandmother's final plea for help. Our beautiful ocean cities lie in ruins, Coral continued. The devourers poisoned our seas and captured millions of our young. Those who escaped hide in deep trenches, but even there, the enemy finds them. We have 7 rotations of our planet before their harvest ships complete their work. After that, nothing of our civilization will remain. What shocked the human crew most was what came next. Coral spoke of ancient legends, stories passed down through generations of Zephyrian elders. These tales described a species called humans, beings of legendary strength and courage, who had once defended the weak across the galaxy. If the old songs speak truth, if humans exist beyond our myths, we beg you to hear our call, Coral whispered. Our ancestors spoke of warriors who fought not for conquest, but for justice. Warriors who would travel impossible distances to protect strangers they had never met. If such beings live among the stars, we need your help before eternal darkness swallows our world. The transmission began breaking up, filled with static and interference. But through the noise, the human crew heard sounds that needed no translation. Explosions echoed in the background. Voices screamed in terror and pain. The mechanical roar of huge machines destroying everything in their path grew louder and louder, then silence. The bridge of the deep. Wisdom remained quiet for several minutes. Everyone stared at Woojin's console, hoping the signal would return. But Elder Coral voice never came back. Her final message to the universe had ended with the sound of her world dying around her. Lee Minho sat in the emergency council chamber, staring at the holographic display showing Elder Coral final message. Around the curved table, representatives from every nation on Earth watched the recording for the 5th time. Some wiped tears from their eyes, others clenched their fists in anger. All of them felt completely helpless. Minho had led Earth's government for 8 years through the most peaceful period in human history. His biggest challenges involved mediating disputes over asteroid mining rights and organizing cultural exchange programs with Mars colonies. Nothing in his experience prepared him for this moment. Chairman Lee spoke. Dr. Park So-young from the Historical Archives Division. We have a problem beyond the obvious one. These Zephyrians believe humans are legendary warriors, but we haven't fought a war in 30 years. Our newest generation doesn't even understand what violence looks like. The room fell silent as the weight of their situation settled in. Earth had no army, no weapons factories, no military commanders. Their space fleet consisted of exploration vessels and cargo haulers. The idea of fighting seemed as foreign as breathing underwater. Dr. Park cleared her throat nervously. However, I've discovered something in the classified archives. Project Lazarus was created in 2089, just after the final Earth War ended. Our ancestors worried that complete pacification might leave humanity defenseless against external threats. She activated another hologram showing dusty file folders marked with the highest security classifications. They designed emergency protocols to rapidly militarize our civilization if needed. The plans include everything from converting factories to weapons production, to locating and training retired military personnel, to awakening what they called humanity's dormant warrior instinct. Minho studied the documents with growing amazement. The project's creators had thought of everything. Hidden weapon designs that could be manufactured quickly, lists of strategic resources stockpiled on remote asteroids, training programs that could turn civilians into soldiers within months, even psychological profiles explaining how to motivate peaceful humans to fight. Within hours of releasing Elder Coral message to the public, something extraordinary happened. The global communication networks exploded with activity. Citizens who had never experienced violence began demanding action. Parents who taught their children that fighting was wrong suddenly spoke about protecting innocent, alien children from monsters. Recruitment centers that had served as historical museums for decades found themselves surrounded by crowds. Young people who spent their days creating art and music now wanted to learn how to use weapons. Factory workers volunteered to retool their production lines. Scientists offered to develop military technology they had only read about in history books. Kim Tae-han, a 25-year-old musician from Seoul, stood in line at his local recruitment center. "I've never hurt anyone in my life," he told reporters. "But those Zephyrian families dying out there could be my family. If there's even a small chance we can help them, I have to try." Similar scenes played out across every continent. Dr. Yoon Mi-jin, a botanist who had spent her career growing flowers, began researching how to manufacture explosives. Engineer Choi Dong-woo abandoned his peaceful solar panel designs to study fighter spacecraft blueprints. Something ancient and powerful was awakening in humanity's collective soul. The gentle, artistic civilization of 2157 was remembering what their species had once been capable of when innocent lives hung in the balance. General Park Dong-wook was tending to his vegetable garden when the call came. At 82 years old, his hands were more familiar with tomato plants than weapons. He had spent the last 30 years growing flowers and writing peaceful poetry about sunrise over his small farm. The government official on his communication device seemed nervous, asking for his help. "General Park, we need you to come out of retirement," the young woman explained. "The situation with the aliens requires your expertise." Park laughed softly. "Young lady, I haven't held a weapon since 2127. These old bones are better suited for harvesting carrots than training soldiers." But when he saw Elder Coral Dream's message, something changed in his weathered face. His granddaughter later said his eyes looked different, harder, more focused, like a sleeping wolf that had suddenly caught a dangerous scent. Within days, similar calls went out across Earth. Colonel Kim Hae-jin left her quiet library, where she had been researching ancient literature. Major Lee Woo-sung abandoned his pottery studio. Sergeant Yoon Tamin stopped his meditation retreat and packed his few belongings. They were the last generation of humans who understood war. The old soldiers gathered at hastily reopened training facilities. Seeing each other after decades apart felt surreal. They had aged into grandparents and great-grandparents, their hair gray or gone, their bodies bent by time. Yet when they spoke about tactics and strategy, their voices carried the same authority that had once commanded respect on battlefields. General Park stood before his first class of recruits, 18-year-olds, who had never seen violence outside of historical documentaries. They looked at him with curiosity and fear. These young people had grown up believing conflict was humanity's shameful past. Something their generation had evolved beyond. "Listen carefully," Park began, his voice carrying across the training ground. "You were raised to be artists, scientists, and philosophers. This is good. But your ancestors were also warriors when innocence needed protection. Today, we must remember what we once knew." The training began slowly. Ancient weapons were removed from museums and studied like archaeological artifacts. Combat manuals written decades ago were digitized and analyzed. The old soldiers had to remember skills they had deliberately tried to forget. Colonel Kim taught hand-to-hand combat to university professors and musicians. Her students stumbled through basic movements, unused to thinking of their bodies as weapons. But she saw something promising in their determination. These peaceful humans possessed something their warrior ancestors had always valued: the willingness to sacrifice themselves for others. Major Lee worked with engineers to understand forgotten military technology. Weapons that had been dismantled were rebuilt and improved. Factory workers who had spent their lives creating beautiful things now learned to manufacture instruments of war. The most difficult part was changing how these peaceful humans thought about conflict. Sergeant Yoon spent hours explaining military psychology to therapists and social workers who would serve as battlefield counselors. They struggled to understand how good people could be trained to fight without becoming monsters. War is not about hatred, Yoon explained to his confused students. It is about protection. We fight not because we want to hurt others, but because we refuse to let innocents suffer. Slowly, the old knowledge transferred to new minds. The sleeping warrior spirit of humanity began to stir under the guidance of teachers who had hoped never to teach these lessons again. Captain Kim, Sujin's ship detected the damaged vessel 3 days into Earth's solar system. The alien craft looked like it had been through a war zone, hull plates missing, engines barely functioning, life support systems failing. Emergency protocols kicked in as Earth's rescue ships rushed to intercept the dying spacecraft. First contact with living aliens happened not in a grand ceremony, but in a medical bay aboard the rescue vessel Gentle Heart. Dr. Park Ji-woo, Earth's leading xenobiologist, found himself face to face with 3 beings unlike anything humanity had imagined. The Zephyrians resembled a cross between dolphins and jellyfish, their translucent skin shifting through colors as they breathed. Patterns of light danced across their bodies like living artwork, creating beautiful displays that Dr. Park slowly realized were their language. They communicated through bioluminescence the way humans used voice and gestures. The survivors called themselves Tidewalker, Reef Singer, and Current Dreamer. Their names reflected their aquatic nature, speaking of ocean currents and coral gardens. Through emergency translation software, their first words to humanity were heartbreaking. Are we safe now? The Devourers, can they follow us here? Tidewalker, who seemed to be their leader, trembled as she described their escape. Her light patterns flickered weakly, showing exhaustion and trauma. Our ship carried 200 refugees when we fled our dying homeworld. One by one, they died during the journey. We 3 remain only because we rationed oxygen meant for many. The aliens' fear of humans initially confused the rescue team. These gentle beings cowered when human doctors approached, their skin flashing warning colors. It took hours of patient communication before Reef Singer explained their terror. The ancient songs describe humans as legendary warriors who could destroy entire armies. She pulsed in nervous blue patterns. We feared you might see us as enemies and kill us immediately. When the Zephyrians learned about humanity's peaceful transformation over the past 30 years, their amazement was visible in brilliant golden light displays across their skin. Current Dreamer, the youngest of the 3, began crying tears that glowed softly in the darkened medical bay. But when Dr. Park showed them recordings of Earth's military mobilization, their reaction changed everything. Reef Singer's entire body erupted in silver and white patterns that the translators struggled to interpret. Finally, the words appeared. The prophecies were true. You are awakening to save us all. She explained that Zephyrian history contained detailed stories about humans, passed down through countless generations. According to their legends, humans had once traveled the galaxy as protectors of weaker species, fighting against those who would enslave or destroy innocent civilizations. We thought you were myths, Tidewalker admitted, her patterns now showing wonder instead of fear. Beautiful stories parents told children about heroes who would someday return when darkness threatened the galaxy. The real revelation came when the survivors described their enemy. The Devourers weren't just conquering the Zephyrian homeworld. They were moving systematically through inhabited systems, consuming everything in their path. Their next target was the Centauri cluster, home to 7 billion souls spread across multiple worlds. Current Dreamer's light patterns turned urgent, red as she shared the timeline. The Devourer fleet moves to Centauri in 50 rotations. Those worlds have no defenses, no warriors, no hope of survival. They don't even know death approaches. For the first time in 30 years, humanity faced a deadline for war. 7 billion innocent lives hung in the balance, and Earth's peaceful civilization had less than 2 months to become the legendary warriors that alien children sang about in their bedtime stories. The transformation of humanity's industrial capacity defied every economic model and production timeline ever created. Factory workers who had spent their careers building passenger shuttles now assembled fighter craft with weapons systems they barely understood. Assembly lines that once produced medical equipment retooled overnight to manufacture combat armor and tactical gear. Admiral Kim Soo-jin stood in the command center of Luna shipyard, watching the impossible happen before her eyes. The woman who had spent her life cataloging dead civilizations now oversaw the largest military construction project in human history. Around her, thousands of workers labored in 3 shifts around the clock, their faces determined, despite the exhaustion. The flagship Indomitable stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull bristling with weapons humanity had only read about in historical archives. Dr. Lee Han-woo, the physicist who designed the ship's main cannon, admitted he wasn't entirely sure it would work without destroying their own vessel. We're combining theoretical physics with engineering principles we haven't used since the 2120s, he explained to Soo-jin during a safety briefing. The power requirements alone should be impossible, but somehow we're making it happen. Across the solar system, similar miracles occurred daily. Mars colonies redirected their entire mining output to produce ship armor. Europa's research stations became weapons laboratories. Even the peaceful artists' colony on Titan contributed by designing psychological warfare programs based on human creativity. The human cost was equally staggering. Captain Park Min-soo, a former merchant marine officer, watched his 19-daughter volunteer for the most dangerous assignment, piloting single fighter craft in the fleet's advanced scouts. She's never been in combat, he told his wife over their last dinner together. None of them have. But they're all we've got. Recruitment had exceeded every projection. The initial call for 100,000 volunteers resulted in over 2 million applications. Farmers became gunners. Teachers became navigators. Musicians learned to operate targeting systems. The peaceful generation of 2157 was transforming itself into something their grandparents would recognize. Training compressed decades of military knowledge into months of intensive education. Colonel Yoon Sung-ho, one of the few remaining combat veterans, worked 18-hour days teaching space warfare tactics to university professors and artists. His students took notes with the same dedication they once applied to studying poetry or quantum physics. The fleet's composition reflected humanity's desperate creativity. Heavy cruisers served as mobile command centers. Destroyer squadrons would provide escort protection. Fast attack craft carried experimental weapons that might or might not function in actual combat. Support vessels hauled supplies for a campaign, with no predetermined end date. Most remarkably, the entire fleet operated on volunteer crews. Every single person aboard the 312 ships had chosen to leave behind family, careers, and the safety of Earth. They understood the mathematics. Many would never return home. Yet, applications continued pouring in even after recruitment officially closed. On departure day, Earth's entire population watched their screens as the fleet formed up beyond Luna's orbit. Children who had never seen military displays waved at the camera feeds. Elderly citizens who remembered humanity's last wars wept openly. Understanding what this moment represented, Admiral Soo-jin delivered humanity's farewell address from the Indomitable's bridge. We go not as conquerors, but as protectors. We carry with us the hopes of every species that still believes good can triumph over evil. Today, humanity remembers what we once were and chooses to be those heroes again. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, and every crew member who saw the sensor readings felt their blood turn cold. Admiral Kim Soo-jin stared at the tactical display, struggling to process the scale of destruction before them. Where the beautiful Zephyrian homeworld once orbited, only a shattered ring of debris remained. Massive devourer, harvesting ships, each the size of Earth's cities, methodically consumed the planetary remnants. Smaller craft darted between the larger vessels, like hungry insects, collecting every scrap of useful material. "Admiral," reported Tactical Officer Park Ji-hoon, his voice barely steady, "I count over 800 enemy vessels. The largest ones they're bigger than anything in our fleet. Some of those harvester ships are 20 kilometers long." The enemy fleet moved with mechanical precision, showing no regard for the millions of lives they had extinguished. Captain Lee So-young, commanding the destroyer, Defiant, whispered into her communication headset, "They're not just conquering worlds, they're erasing them completely." The Devourer fleet detected humanity's arrival within minutes. Their response came as a single transmission broadcast on all frequencies, not in words, but in images that needed no translation. The message showed scenes of conquered worlds, enslaved populations, and the complete destruction of civilizations that had dared to resist. Then came the voice, cold and mechanical, speaking through universal translators. "Unknown species, you have entered a harvesting zone. Submit your vessels for inspection and assimilation. Your biological distinctiveness will be added to our collective. Resistance will result in your immediate consumption." A second message followed, containing detailed scans of the human fleet. The Devourers had analyzed every ship, counted every weapon, calculated humanity's fighting capacity down to the last percentage point. Their conclusion was simple: your technology is primitive. Your numbers are insufficient. Submit now, or be destroyed with minimum effort. Admiral Soo-jin looked around her bridge at crew members who had been peaceful citizens just 2 years ago. Communications Officer Choi Woo-jin, who once wrote music about the beauty of nebulas. Navigation Specialist Yoon Mi-young, a former teacher who had helped children learn about alien cultures. Weapons Officer Kim Tae-hoon, a botanist who had never hurt a living thing in his entire life. Now these gentle humans sat at combat stations, their faces hard with determination. They had traveled impossible distances to face an enemy that considered them insignificant insects. The Devourers expected humanity to surrender or die quietly, like so many species before them. Soo-jin opened a channel to the entire human fleet, and then broadcast a response on the same frequency the enemy had used. Her voice carried the authority of someone speaking for her entire species. Devourer Fleet. "This is Admiral Kim Soo-jin of Earth's Defense Force. We have received your terms and find them unacceptable. You have murdered innocent civilizations and enslaved peaceful beings. You mistake our willingness to negotiate for weakness." She paused, looking at the tactical display showing the overwhelming enemy numbers. "We choose neither submission nor quiet death. Instead, we offer you one chance to withdraw from this system and cease your attacks on innocent species. Refuse, and you will learn why legends call humans the galaxy's fiercest protectors." The response from the Devourer fleet was immediate. Weapon systems across 800 ships powered up simultaneously, creating energy signatures that lit up the human fleet's sensors like Christmas trees. The battle for Kepler 442 was about to begin. The first exchange of fire lit up space, like a deadly fireworks display. Devourer plasma beams, designed to slice through planetary defenses, met human energy shields that shouldn't have been able to withstand such power. But humanity's desperate engineering had produced miracles born from necessity and determination. Captain Yoon Taman, commanding the light cruiser Persistent Hope, watched his shields flicker under enemy fire. His crew, former artists and teachers turned warriors, worked with deadly precision. Navigation Officer Kim Hae-young, who once painted landscapes, now calculated attack vectors with the skill of a master tactician. They're fighting like machines, Hai-Yung reported, studying enemy movement patterns. Same formations, same responses to every situation. They've never faced unpredictable opponents before. Humanity's advantage became clear within the first hour. The Devourers had conquered hundreds of civilizations, but all their previous enemies had fought conventionally, meeting superior firepower with desperate last stands. Humans fought differently, using tactics that seemed to emerge from some ancient instinct their peaceful civilization had forgotten, but never truly lost. Small human fighter craft, piloted by volunteers barely out of their teens, swarmed around massive Devourer, harvesting ships like angry insects. They didn't attack the heavily armored sections where enemies expected them. Instead, they targeted sensor arrays, communication dishes, and engine intakes, weak points that required intimate knowledge of spacecraft design. Lieutenant Park Dong-Hyun, a 20-year-old former music student, led his squadron in a maneuver that military historians would later call impossible. They flew their fighters inside a Devourer dreadnought's weapons range to close for the massive guns to target them, and systematically destroyed the ship's point defense systems from within its own defensive perimeter. The breakthrough came when Captain Lee Ji-woo made a decision that changed everything. His destroyer Relentless Guardian had taken critical damage, life support failing, hull breached in 3 sections. Traditional tactics said he should retreat, repair, and rejoin the battle. Instead, Gi-woo ordered his remaining crew to the escape pods and set course directly for the largest Devourer command ship. His final transmission to Admiral Soo-jin was simple. "Tell my daughter I remembered what humans are capable of when innocent lives matter more than our own." The Relentless Guardian struck the enemy dreadnought at full speed, its fusion drive detonating on impact. The explosion destroyed both ships and sent debris cascading through enemy formations. But more importantly, it sent a message that rippled through the Devourer fleet. These humans would rather die than allow evil to succeed. Colonel Park So-young led the most dangerous mission of the battle. When human boarding pods punched through enemy hull armor, she and her Marines fought hand-to-hand in the vacuum of space. These former social workers and librarians moved through Devourer ships like ghosts, using knowledge of alien psychology learned from peaceful first contact protocols to create fear and confusion among enemy crews. "They don't understand us," So-young reported during a brief communication window. "They're used to opponents who surrender when faced with certain death. They can't comprehend warriors who fight harder when the odds become impossible." As the 18-hour battle raged on, something remarkable happened. The Devourer fleet, accustomed to swift victories over demoralized enemies, found themselves facing humans who seemed to grow more determined with every casualty. These peaceful artists and teachers had awakened something primal, the same instinct that had once made their species the apex predator of Earth. Admiral Kim Soo-jin floated in the command center of her damaged flagship, staring at the tactical display that told the story of humanity's first interstellar war. Green dots represented surviving human ships. Red markers showed where brave crews had made their final sacrifice. The empty spaces between them spoke louder than any battle report. The Devourer fleet was gone, completely destroyed or scattered to the far reaches of space. But victory felt hollow when Soo-jin counted the cost. 18 ships would never see Earth again. The destroyer Morning Star had vanished in a plasma storm while protecting a damaged cruiser. The frigate Gentle Courage had sacrificed itself to save 3 other vessels from a coordinated enemy attack. Captain Park Min-ho limped onto the bridge, his left arm in a medical brace. His ship Determined Hope had lost half its crew during the final assault, yet he managed a tired smile for his admiral. "Ma'am, rescue operations are proceeding. We've found over 200,000 prisoners in the enemy ships, beings from dozens of different worlds." The liberation of Devourer prison vessels revealed the true scope of their enemies' evil. Entire families from peaceful civilizations had been kept, in cramped holding cells, waiting to be processed for slavery, or worse. Children who had never seen their homeworlds cried in languages humanity didn't recognize, comforted by human medics who spoke no words but offered gentle hands and warm blankets. Dr. Yoon Hae-young, the fleet's chief medical officer, worked 8 shifts treating survivors. "Admiral, we've identified prisoners from 43 different species," she reported during a brief rest period. "Some have been captive for years. They keep asking if this is real, if they're truly free." Among the freed prisoners were Zephyrian families who had survived the destruction of their homeworld. When they saw human soldiers removing their chains, their bioluminescent skin erupted in patterns of pure joy. Elder Wavesong, one of the survivors, approached Sujin with trembling movements. The ancient songs were true. She pulsed in grateful blue and gold patterns. "Humans do exist. You crossed impossible distances to save strangers you had never met. Our legends called you warriors of light, and now we understand why." The aftermath of battle revealed humanity's true transformation. Lieutenant Kim Tae-young, a former poet, helped alien children find their parents among the rescued prisoners. Engineer Lee Sojin, who had once built art installations, now repaired life support systems for beings whose biology she barely understood. Every human in the fleet had become something they never expected, protectors of the innocent. But the galaxy had been watching. Within days of the battle's end, Earth's communication arrays lit up with incoming transmissions from across known space. The messages came from civilizations humanity had never contacted, species that existed only in theoretical databases. The first transmission came from the Andorian Republic. "Noble humans, our worlds face threat from the same evil you have destroyed. The legends speak truth. You are the guardians our ancestors promised would return." More messages followed hourly. The Crystalline Collective begged for help against pirates ravaging their trade routes. The Peaceful Builders requested human protection for their colony worlds. The Tree Singers asked for warriors to defend their forest planets from industrial destroyers. Chairman Lee Min-ho, receiving these pleas from Earth, realized that humanity's peaceful age was truly over. The species that had spent 30 years pursuing art and philosophy was now being called to serve as the galaxy's protectors. Admiral Sujin understood the weight of this new responsibility as she looked at her exhausted crew. These former teachers and artists had proven themselves worthy of the legends alien children sang. Now the galaxy expected them to be heroes for everyone who couldn't defend themselves. The age of human guardianship had begun.